So, in order to supposedly discuss the politically incorrect reality about sex and transgenderism, Ben Shapiro has brought on his show Dr. Debra Soh, who holds the impressive title of Doctor. And not just anyone with the title of doctor, but a former sex researcher and neuroscientist. Now, this is definitely a step up from just grabbing random people off the street on Rodeo Drive, like Will Witt does, but it is not enough to exempt his show from all further scrutiny. For that reason, an episode of the Ben Shapiro Show is about to have its Facts and Logic examined by Sophia Shapiro in just a moment. Hello, Internet. This is Sophia, the Red Angel, doing my best on this channel to bolster social justice and the general betterment of society through the powers of logic, reason, and respect for evidence. If you like that, then subscribe to this channel, ring the bell, share, and comment. I also would like to remind everyone that I am now on a new update schedule on this channel. I will now be uploading a new video every Sunday, as well as the first and third Thursday of every month. I make this change in hopes that this slight reduction in my schedule will allow me to focus on improving the quality of my videos. Anyway, as I mentioned, recently Ben Shapiro had Dr. Debra Soh on his show, and it is time for us to take a critical look at that segment.
It's obviously one of the most contentious areas of American public life and apparently international public life is around the science surrounding gender.
Yes, because often there is a lot at stake for many people when this subject is brought up. People's access to necessary medical care is at stake when these issues are discussed, so it can be especially devastating when people with religious and/or other ideological prejudices seek to subvert discussion on these topics.
It has become basically unsayable to even suggest that men and women exist as biological entities and are also different in a variety of ways, ranging from brain function to the biology of actual sex organs.
Unsayable? Who exactly is objecting to you saying it? Are you suggesting that it is the transgender community that is objecting to you saying that? Because it seems to me like it is time for another installment of Fallacies Exposed. And after looking at it a while, it seems pretty clear to me that the fallacy that you are trying to pull here is the Motte and Bailey Fallacy. Rational Wiki defines the Motte and Bailey Fallacy as a combination of bait and switch and equivocation in which someone switches between a Motte, an easy-to-defend and often common-sense statement, and a Bailey, a hard-to-defend and more controversial statement, in order to defend a viewpoint. It then goes on to explain, someone will argue the easy-to-defend position, or the Motte, temporarily to ward off critics, while the less defensible position, the Bailey, remains the desired belief, yet is never actually defended. How might Ben Shapiro possibly be using the Motte and Bailey fallacy here? Well, there are a number of things that someone could mean when they say men and women exist as biological entities and are also different in a variety of ways, ranging from brain function to the biology of actual sex organs. it is pretty indisputable that there are certain biological characteristics that are generally characteristic of men, but not women, and others that are generally characteristic of women, but not men. And among these characteristics that are generally characteristic of one, but not the other, are the sex organs. The same goes with actual brain function, and as a matter of fact, it is very likely that when someone is transgender, it is because their brain function is not in the manner that is generally characteristic of what you would expect given that person's reproductive organs. This understanding of what Ben Shapiro, or Benny Boy as I will call him, since in my case, calling him Ben Shapiro over and over again is just plain awkward. This understanding of what Benny Boy means is clearly the Motte of his Motte and Bailey fallacy. So, what is the Bailey that I feel pretty confident is his actual agenda? Well, that is the idea that if a certain aspect of a person's biology, say for example, the sex organs, is in a manner that is typically characteristic of a man, then that person must be a man. And if it is in a manner that is typically characteristic of a woman, then that person must be a woman. But in order to be sure that Benny Boy is trying to pull a Motte and Bailey, I have to verify that his latter meaning is his actual agenda. And since I do not have the ability to read his mind, the only remaining option is to skip a bit forward in the video that I am responding to and show you where he says something that gives his actual meaning away. So, here it is.
CNN the other day headlined that individuals with the cervix should make sure that they are cervically screened for cervical cancer. I have no idea what an individual with the cervix is other than a woman.
There it is. Benny Boy specifically said that he does not know what an individual with a cervix is other than a woman. Now granted, most individuals with cervixes are women, and most women do have cervixes. But to say that they are the same thing is to say not just that most individuals who are in one category are in the other, but that everyone who is in one category must be in the other. Benny Boy is rejecting the idea that there exist, or even could exist, individuals with cervixes who are not women, or individuals without cervixes who are women. And this proves that the Bailey of Benny Boy's possible Motte and Bailey is indeed his agenda. So now we can be pretty much certain that this is indeed a case of the Motte and Bailey fallacy. In some situations, one might conclude that someone who said something like this was simply doing so as a result of a brain fart, not rejecting the counterexamples of transgender or intersex people, but failing to have even thought of such counterexamples. However, not only has awareness of transgender and intersex people gotten to the point that such situations are exceedingly rare these days, but the context of this video completely removes that possibility from reasonable consideration in this case.
And what's really disturbing is that the information that is being purported to be scientifically accurate, the information that's actually being supported by some scientific organizations, medical organizations, even governmental policies, are not actually fact-based. They're not actually based in reality, or as you mentioned, biology, because for whatever reason, biology is seen as hateful nowadays.
And so for another installment of Fallacy Exposed. For one thing, you are committing a well-known fallacy known as the straw man fallacy, where instead of arguing against someone's actual position, you are arguing against a weaker and more easily refuted caricature of their position. Biology is not deemed hateful. It is certain assertions that some people are making about biology that are being deemed harmful and, depending on the agenda with which they are spread, hateful. But for that to be the same as biology itself being deemed hateful, one must first establish that those assertions represent the actual position of the science of biology. And that is where another fallacy comes into play here, and that one is the appeal to rebellion fallacy. It is an underdocumented fallacy, yet one that clearly, nonetheless, is a fallacy and a favorite one of conspiracy theorists. The first reference that I was able to find on this fallacy was on a page detailing fallacies used by conspiracy theorists on an old, largely abandoned site called What Grinds My Gears. This fallacy is when you suggest that an idea should be regarded as true just because an authoritative body says that it is not true, whether that authoritative body be a government institution, an academic institution, or any other kind of authority. And while it is underdocumented, appeal to rebellion still clearly is a fallacy because, well, being contrary does not automatically make you correct. And in this case, Dr. Soh's use of the appeal to rebellion fallacy actually backfires because it reveals that Benny Boy is committing another fallacy by bringing her in as an expert in the first place, specifically one of the 3 appeal to authority fallacies. Martimer81 has a really good video about appeal to authority that is linked to in the YouTube description area below. In it, he explains 3 different ways in which an appeal to authority can be fallacious. The first is when the authority that you are appealing to does not have the relevant credentials, whether it be because they lack any real credentials or they have real credentials but not in the field that they are talking about. I like to call this kind of fallacy appeal to irrelevant authority. But that is not what is going on here, as Dr. Soh does have a doctorate, and one that might actually be in the correct field. Skipping over to the third way, that is when you treat the word of the authority that is appealed to as though it is infallible, rather than merely a far more educated opinion than that of the typical person off the street. That one I like to call appeal to excessive authority, but that is not necessarily going on here either. But it is the second fallacious kind of appeal to authority that we now know is going on here, that being when the expert that you bring in or cite has the relevant credentials, but is advocating a position that is at odds with the consensus of the rest of the community of relevant experts. I like to call this appeal to renegade authority. Even in this clip, Dr. Soh kinda points out that the authoritative bodies that promote views that she does not approve of include scientific and medical organizations. However, in the introduction to her book, which I got so that you don't have to, she makes it very clear that it is the overwhelming community of experts in her own field that she is complaining about in her invocation of the appeal to rebellion, constantly accusing all of the mainstream scientific institutions of caving into that dreaded cancel culture. By the way, if you think that this so-called cancel culture is the ominous thing that people like her paint it to be, I suggest that you take a look at a recent video that I did about the subject, which I will link to in the YouTube video description below. Anyway, normally it would have taken quite a bit of research to show when citing a certain expert constitutes an appeal to renegade authority. However, Dr. Soh's appeal to rebellion saved me a lot of time and energy in that area, making it easy to establish that accepting her word as being a reflection of the best understanding that science currently has on the issue is indeed an appeal to renegade authority. I don't have to do hours of research to verify that others in her field consider her views to be on the fringe. She pretty much tells us that herself. Let us go on.
Or are we just talking about people who are suffering, when we talk about transgender people who are suffering from gender dysphoria, which is a legitimate mental condition?
Wait a minute, Benny boy. Did you say medical condition or mental condition? Let me slow that down one moment so I can be sure which of the two you just said.
Gender dysphoria, which is a legitimate mental condition.
Oh, you did say mental condition. In that case, I should point you to WebMD's page specifically on gender dysphoria, which says, gender dysphoria used to be called gender identity disorder, but the mismatch between body and internal sense of gender is not a mental illness. Instead, what needs to be addressed are the stress, anxiety, and depression that go along with it. So yes, gender dysphoria is a condition that mental health professionals have to keep in mind because it can contribute to conditions that are mental conditions, such as stress, anxiety, and depression, but it is not in itself a mental disorder. And the conservative policies that people like you promote, Benny Boy, contribute to the environment in which people with gender dysphoria are more susceptible to these mental conditions. Ben Shapiro likes to present himself as a master of facts and logic, but here I have only been able to point out the tip of the iceberg of what is wrong with a segment of less than 11 minutes from his show. It seems to me that he has trouble accepting that the facts don't care about his feelings or his insane ideologies any more than they do about anyone else's. Anywho, to those watching this video, thank you for watching it to the end. I hope that you feel you benefited by doing so. Please hit the thumbs up button and leave your comment in the comments area below. Make sure that you are subscribed to this channel and that the bell icon is active so as to increase the chance that you receive notifications when I upload new videos to this channel in the future. Share this video with your friends and everyone else, whether by social media or by whatever other means. And until next time, see ya!